Now that the regular season is over and the playoffs have begun, everyone is locked in every night watching the best teams begin their quests for a title. And while there's plenty to discuss on that front, there are also plenty of things that still need to be wrapped up from the season, and since most of the top rookies played on teams that didn't make it to the playoffs, the topic of today's video pertains right to that. Today we'll be revisiting the 2022 NBA Draft by going through every lottery pick from that draft and giving a grade to the selections 1 year later, now that they have all fully completed their first seasons in the league. A lot has changed between now and then, and while some players lived up to the hype, others left us feeling a bit disappointed, so the grades reflect that. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. We'll start things off with the number 1 pick in the draft, where the Orlando Magic selected Paolo Banchero, and the grade here 1 year later is an A. Banchero is going to more than likely take home the Rookie of the Year award this year. He's been the most productive rookie in the class from start to finish, and he averaged 20 points per game, which isn't something that many first-year guys can say that they've accomplished. Obviously, he has things he needs to continue to work on, as all rookies do, but after being taken number 1 overall, he did more than enough to justify the selection, and looks like a future all-star in the making. His ability to use his strong frame to overpower defenders while having the quickness off the dribble to beat slower opponents creates a ton of mismatches for him, and if the 3-ball continues to improve, then he's going to become even more difficult to stop. Next, with the 2nd pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder selected Chet Holmgren, who missed the entire season due to injury, so unfortunately, his grade is not available for the time being. Next, with the 3rd pick though, the Houston Rockets selected Jabari Smith, and the grade here 1 year later is a C. As a draft prospect, Jabari was labeled as the most well-balanced player, as someone who was supposed to be impactful in many different areas, with his smooth shooting stroke being one of the biggest highlights of his game at the time. He was a phenomenal defensive prospect in college, his face-up game and ability to confidently rise up and shoot over defenders was a highlight as well, and his versatility had him in the running for being the top pick at the time. But now, a year later, we find ourselves much more flawed of a prospect than was originally anticipated. He had a wildly inconsistent rookie season, and his shooting hasn't really come around yet. He has very questionable touch around the basket, he struggles to create space to get good shots off, and defensively, he wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't the dominant defensive player that the Rockets were hoping for either. Up next, with the 4th pick, the Sacramento Kings selected Keegan Murray, and the grade here 1 year later is a B+. Murray has stepped into the starting power forward spot immediately as a rookie, and he's done very well in that role. The Kings had the longest playoff drought in the entire league entering this year, and even though Murray wasn't necessarily the driving force of that drought ending this year, he definitely did contribute in a positive way towards it. He's a sharpshooter, making 41% of his threes, scoring about 12 points per game, and after the team got some backlash for drafting him at the time, Murray has fully quieted those doubters. Next, with the 5th pick, the Detroit Pistons selected Jaden Ivey, and the grade here is an A-. There was a lot of positive that came from Ivey's rookie season, and his per-game numbers were arguably as good as anybody's in the class besides Paolo Banchero, putting up about 16 points and 5 assists a night. Ivey's blistering speed gives him an edge because he can blow by opponents and get into the paint with ease, and as the season progressed, he took notable strides forward as a finisher and a playmaker, and I think what helped that happen was the fact that he was in a situation that not every rookie gets to be in, where he got to play freely without much repercussion because the Pistons were actively tanking, and because of that, he got to go through the ups and downs of rookie struggles and still be heavily involved in the next game. And next up, with the 6th pick, the Indiana Pacers selected Bennedict Mathurin, and the grade here 1 year later is another A-. Mathurin came out of the gate playing outstanding basketball, putting up over 20 points a game off the bench for a period, but the 82-game season got the best of him, and he didn't necessarily have the greatest second half of the year. Mathurin is an explosive scoring guard who can put up points in a hurry, and he finished the year still averaging 17 points a night, but like most rookies, he struggled to do so efficiently, so while his overall season was very good, he did fall off a little bit as time went on. Up next, with the 7th pick, the Portland Trail Blazers selected Shaedon Sharpe, and the grade here a year later is a B. Sharpe spent most of the season playing spot minutes off the bench, showing flashes here and there of an elite athletic talent who made exciting highlights, but the Blazers were trying to make the playoffs, so their veterans were obviously the priority in the rotation. Once it became apparent that the team had no chance of making the playoffs, they fully unleashed Sharpe and played him starters minutes, and as a starter in the last 10 games of the year, he started really going off, showing what he can be capable of moving forward, because in those games, he averaged an efficient 24 points per game. Next, with the 8th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans selected Dyson Daniels, and the grade here a year later is a C. Daniels is a tough one to grade because the Pelicans were a fairly deep team vying for a playoff spot, so he didn't always get to make an imprint on games when he got minutes, but the one thing that always stuck out with him was his hounding ability to defend. On the flip side though, he really lacks any kind of scoring assertiveness, almost always looking to make an easy pass instead, so he needs to be more balanced on both ends to earn a consistent role moving forward. Up next, with the 9th pick, the San Antonio Spurs selected Jeremy Sochan, and the grade here 1 year later is a B. Sochan took a little bit to adjust to the level of play in the NBA, but as the season progressed, he got more and more comfortable, and his production followed suit. He's a very well-rounded two-way player who always looks to make the smart play. He's got very high basketball IQ, he's already a very good defensive player, and as a scorer, he's not going to be a go-to guy, but he puts himself in positions to score within the natural flow of the offense. Next, with the 10th pick, the Washington Wizards selected Johnny Davis, and the grade here a year later is a D-. Davis had virtually zero impact on the season at all for the Wizards, but like Shaedon Sharpe, his team did start to play him bigger minutes at the very end of the season when they were officially eliminated from the playoffs. Admittedly, he did have a few good games in that span, but it's hard to give him credit for it when the Wizards had already officially thrown in the towel, and unlike Shaedon Sharpe, Davis didn't show many flashes at all when it mattered, so I'm struggling to buy into him as a player moving forward. Up next, with the 11th pick, the Thunder traded with the Knicks to go draft Ousmane Dieng, and the grade here a year later is a D. Dieng was drafted as a project of a pick, and a year later that's still pretty much exactly what he is. He spent a ton of time down in the G League, where he did show some flashes of a player with a future in the league, but in the NBA, he just was not ready to make a positive impact yet. He's going to require patience to get the most out of him, but you don't get a better grade for a hypothetical. Next, with the 12th pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder selected Jalen Williams, and the grade here is an A. The Thunder got back-to-back picks, and while Dieng was the raw prospect they selected, Williams proved this year that he very well may end up being the best player in the entire class. Williams experienced plenty of ups and downs early on in the season, as rookies do, but in the second half of the year, he made a serious push for the Rookie of the Year award. He causes havoc on defense, he scores the ball incredibly efficiently both inside and out, his court vision and ability to pick out the right pass at the right time is very impressive for a young wing player, and with his size and length, he'll be a two-way savant for years to come. Up next, with the 13th pick, the Detroit Pistons selected Jalen Duren, and the grade here a year later is a B+. Duren, in my opinion, is the most promising big man within that crowded group of big men that the Pistons have, which is why it was annoying to me to see them not necessarily prioritizing his development in favor of guys like Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. Duren has worlds of potential as a defensive rim protector, he's a freak athlete who runs the floor well and finishes strong in the paint, he grabs a ton of rebounds, and he fits much more into a modern NBA team. And finally, the last pick from the lottery was Ochai Agbaji by the Cleveland Cavaliers before they ended up trading him to the Utah Jazz, and the grade here a year later is a C. Agbaji was drafted to be a sharpshooter at the next level, and while he did have games where he caught fire from deep, overall he hasn't quite lived up to that hype yet. He was also an older rookie, which made these inconsistencies a bit more disappointing, but overall, his rookie year brought enough positive to keep that hope alive moving forward. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below how you would grade these rookies 1 year later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.